in late April to early May 1943 near Tunis, Tunisia, North Africa. Allied reconnaissance units made an extraordinary discovery that would become one of the most valuable intelligence finds of the North African campaign. They found an intact, functional German Tiger 712 tank abandoned in an olive grove. The massive tank, weighing 60 tons, stood silent with its 80 gun unmoving. The German crew had fled without destroying their vehicle or setting demolition charges. Amid the collapse of German forces, this powerful weapon was left for the Allies to capture whole. What would be learned from this tank would prove more valuable than destroying a dozen Tigers in combat. The tank revealed not only German engineering excellence, but also a critical strategic weakness: its massive fuel consumption. This issue made the Tiger unsustainable in long-term military operations. The North African campaign ended in disaster for Axis forces, with around 20,000 to 30,000 German and Italian soldiers surrendering in Tunisia between May 7–13, 1943. Among them were survivors from the renowned German Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, one of the premier armored units equipped with Tigers. Tigers had first arrived in Tunisia in late November 1942, marking their combat deed in North Africa. By January 1943, the battalion had built up to 20 operational Tigers. The reputation of the Tiger tank had already spread. Soviet forces on the Eastern Front had encountered them near Leningrad in January 1943 and reported that these behemoths could destroy T-34 medium tanks from distances over 2,000 meters. The Tigers were equipped with the famous WWII gun, originally designed for anti-aircraft purposes and converted for anti-tank use. This weapon could penetrate any Allied tank's front armor at long ranges, making return fire virtually impossible. American forces first received intelligence about the German super heavy tanks in early February 1943 through British sources. These reports seemed exaggerated to many soldiers who were used to fighting Panzer III and IV tanks. However, the reality of the Tiger far exceeded expectations. On February 14, 1943, German forces launched Operation Frühlingswind, a spring wind, striking American positions at Fade Pass in central Tunisia. The 21st Panzer Division, reinforced by Tigers from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, attacked Combat Command A of the U.S. 1st Armored Division. The Battle of Kasserine Pass, fought on February 14–15, 1943, demonstrated the Tigers' superiority. During the battle, Combat Command C of the 1st Armored Division counterattacked with 52 Sherman tanks. German forces, including Tigers, set up anti-tank guns in ambush positions. By the time Combat Command C withdrew, 46 of the 52 Sherman tanks had been destroyed or disabled. Interestingly, only one Sherman tank was hit by an 8A bomb shell, while most were destroyed by 50 mm or 70 mm rounds from Panzer Cathara and IV tanks. The Tiger, though a fearsome weapon, was relatively few in number, but its psychological impact on American tank crews was immense. The mere mention of Tigers would send American units into a frenzy, often calling for air or artillery support before advancing. This psychological effect multiplied the Tiger's tactical value. By March 1943, training materials were developed to address the phenomenon of Tiger phobia among American tank crews. Intelligence summaries indicated that while Tigers were few in number and had vulnerabilities, their tactical advantage was significant due to their formidable armor and firepower. In the final weeks of the Tunisian campaign in April and early May 1943, a different vulnerability of the Tiger was revealed. Mechanical breakdowns, a lack of spare parts, and fuel shortages rendered more Tigers immobile than Allied forces did through combat action. Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 had started with 20 Tigers and 16 Panzer II tanks, but by the end of April, only a few Tigers remained operational. The rest had been abandoned or destroyed by their crews. The battalion's war diary, which was later captured by British forces, chronicled the worsening situation. By January 1943, only 11 Tigers were operational and fuel shortages were critical. By March, just 6 Tigers were working, with most others out of service due to mechanical failures or fuel shortages. By April 20, only a few Tigers could move, and many had to be abandoned during the retreat. One such tank, Tiger 7 and 12, was left intact in an olive grove. The crew, facing Allied pressure and low fuel, abandoned it, possibly expecting it to be destroyed or left behind. This tank would later be discovered by Allied forces on June 9, 1943. It was a complete and functional Tiger, a rare find that offered invaluable intelligence. The discovery of Tiger 7 or 12 was a turning point, as it allowed the Allies to study the tank's engineering and operational weaknesses firsthand, something they had not been able to do in combat. The tank's extraordinary size and weight, 56.9 tons, highlighted the logistical challenges the Germans faced in keeping such a machine operational. This intelligence would play a critical role in the subsequent campaigns. The American M31 tank recovery vehicles were designed to handle the 30-ton weight of Sherman tanks, but moving the 56.9-ton Tiger required multiple recovery vehicles, along with bulldozers and specialized heavy equipment. To avoid detection by any remaining German air forces, the convoy transporting Tiger 7012 from the capture site to Tunisport moved mainly at night. By May 1943, German air power in Tunisia had been effectively neutralized. Engineers had to assess every bridge to ensure it could bear the weight of the Tiger and its transport trailer. Some roads couldn't support the combined weight, so what should have been a 4-hour journey took 3 days. At Tunisport, loading the Tiger onto a ship presented another challenge. The combined weight of the tank and its shipping cradle exceeded 65 tons, requiring heavy lift cranes rated for 70 tons or more. Engineers located suitable equipment and successfully loaded Tiger 712 onto the Liberty ship SS Samuel P. Bush for its Atlantic crossing. The voyage took approximately 3 weeks, and the ship arrived in Norfolk, Virginia in early July 1943. From there, the Tiger was transported by special reinforced flapped rail car to the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, where it arrived in mid-July 1943. Aberdeen Proving Ground was the U.S. Army's premier facility for testing and evaluating ordnance and armored vehicles. Engineers and intelligence officers had spent months preparing, translating German technical manuals, and compiling battlefield intelligence reports. Brigadier General Gladian M. Barnes, the Chief of Research and Development for Army Ordnance, sent specific instructions to Aberdeen's testing teams. The captured Tiger tank represented a unique opportunity to evaluate the enemy's most formidable tank in detail. The testing was comprehensive, covering the Tiger's armor protection, armament effectiveness, mechanical reliability, mobility, and importantly, logistical requirements such as fuel consumption and operational range. Initial inspections revealed the sophistication of German engineering. The Tiger used interleaved road wheels and a torsion bar suspension, which provided excellent weight distribution and cross-country performance. Its Maybach Alvar transmission featured 8 forward gears and 4 reverse gears, allowing the tank to move as quickly backward as it could forward, a useful feature for defensive maneuvers. The 88 BEM KWK-3 F6 gun, capable of firing armor-piercing rounds at velocities exceeding 900 meters per second, was exceptionally accurate. The Tiger's armor impressed American engineers. Its frontal hull armor was 100 mm thick, and the turret had similar protection, ranging from 120 to 200 mm. The side armor was 60 mm thick, with the superstructure armoring at 18 mm. This formidable protection made the Tiger nearly invulnerable to most Allied anti-tank weapons when engaged head-on. However, one issue immediately raised concerns among the engineers: the Tiger's fuel capacity and consumption. The Tiger carried 532 liters, about 140 U.S. gallons of fuel, stored in 4 tanks located in the rear compartments. Its Maybach HL230LL engine produced 690 horsepower, which, though substantial, was barely enough to move the 56.9-ton tank. According to the German operating documents, the Tiger's operator 95 km 121 miles on roads under ideal conditions, or 110 km 68 miles off-road. American engineers, familiar with the operational ranges of Sherman tanks, were concerned that these figures seemed quite low, especially given the Tiger's size. The testing program at Aberdeen ran from July 1943 through January 1944, with the highest priority given to fuel consumption testing, as it directly affected operational capabilities. American military doctrine emphasized mobile warfare, which required armored units to operate far from supply bases. A tank with a limited operational range posed significant strategic problems, regardless of its combat capabilities. Tests on paved roads at a steady cruising speed confirmed the German specifications. Tiger 712 consumed about 195 liters per 100 kilometers, roughly 1.2 gallons per mile, giving it a theoretical maximum range of around 117 miles, matching the German claim of 121 miles. However, cross-country testing, which simulated combat conditions with hills, mud, sand water crossings, and obstacles, revealed far worse fuel consumption. After testing on a 32-mile course with frequent speed changes, the Tiger consumed 132 gallons, leaving only 8 gallons remaining, meaning the fuel consumption was about 4.125 gallons per mile, reducing its operational range to just 34 miles in such conditions. Combat simulation tests, which included rapid acceleration and deceleration, turret operations, and extended idling periods simulating observation or radio use, showed even more alarming results. Under these intensive combat conditions, fuel consumption reached 6.1 gallons per mile, reducing the operational range to approximately 23 miles before running out of fuel. The testing results painted a grim strategic picture. While the Tiger tank was immensely powerful in direct combat, it was unsustainable for extended mobile operations. Its massive fuel consumption required constant resupply, which would overwhelm any logistics system. Aberdeen engineers calculated that each Tiger in active combat needed about 1,500 to 2,000 gallons of fuel per week. A battalion of 20 Tigers would require 30,000 to 40,000 gallons weekly, not counting the fuel needed for support vehicles and other equipment. In comparison, an American tank battalion with 53 Sherman tanks needed around 65,000 gallons of fuel per week, including all battalion vehicles. Despite having fewer than half the number of tanks, German heavy tank battalions required almost as much fuel as the American medium tank battalions. In October 1943, Colonel Barnes compiled the testing data into classified intelligence reports that were distributed to all Army armor commands. The reports highlighted the Tiger's formidable combat capabilities, particularly its superior armor and powerful main armament. However, the critical vulnerability of its fuel consumption was emphasized. The reports recommended targeting German fuel supply lines as an effective strategy to neutralize the Tiger threat. Further analysis of captured German supply documents revealed the full scale of Germany's logistical struggles in maintaining Tiger operations. German logistics in 1943 and 1944 could barely support the fuel needs of the Tiger, even under favorable conditions. With Allied air superiority destroying German supply lines, fuel shortages severely limited the Tiger's effectiveness. German heavy tank battalions often operated no more than 30 to 40 kilometers from their supply bases, avoiding prolonged movements. This logistical constraint led German units to prefer static defensive positions instead of pursuing enemy forces. Captured German war diaries further confirmed this. A diary entry from the heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101 in Normandy, dated July 8, 1944, reported that while the Tigers destroyed 16 Shermans and 3 Cromwell tanks for the loss of only 1 Tiger, the battalion was immobilized due to fuel shortages after just 4 hours of combat. Similarly, on July 20, fuel allocations were reduced by 40%, forcing the Tigers into defensive positions. The diary lamented that the best tanks in Europe were idle due to lack of fuel, with 3 Tigers even abandoned during a retreat. All of the Tigers were mechanically functional, but their fuel tanks were empty, and no fuel was available to get them moving. Demolition charges were set, but the crews weren't sure if they had detonated properly. The crews evacuated on foot. British intelligence later shared captured documents, showing similar patterns across other fronts. Records from Heavy Panzer Battalion 503 in Italy revealed that Tigers were repeatedly immobilized due to fuel shortages. Similarly, the 5th SS Panzer Division, Viking, in the east faced the same issue, where fuel shortages severely crippled their combat effectiveness. Everywhere the Tigers operated, fuel shortages severely limited their ability to perform. By November 1943, American intelligence had distributed tactical guidance based on the findings from Aberdeen to all combat units. This guidance advised units to avoid direct frontal engagements with Tigers when possible. Instead, they should maneuver in such a way as to force the Tigers to reposition, which would burn through their fuel reserves. The longer Tigers had to move, the quicker they would exhaust their fuel. Immobilized Tigers could be bypassed or destroyed with artillery and air support, thus avoiding direct tank engagement. Training films produced in late 1943 included fuel consumption data. One film, Understanding German Heavy Tanks, explained that the Tiger tank consumed approximately 3 to 6 gallons of fuel per mile, depending on terrain and tactical conditions. In contrast, Sherman tanks consumed less than 1 gallon per mile under most conditions. This meant that American tanks could travel 5 to 6 times farther on the same amount of fuel. Crews were instructed to exploit this mobility advantage, making the Tigers chase American formations and burn their limited fuel before striking when the Tigers were no longer capable of maneuvering. The Normandy campaign in the summer of 1944 provided validation for the analysis done at Aberdeen. As Allied forces broke out from their beachheads in July and August, German armor units found themselves unable to conduct mobile operations. Heavy panzer battalions equipped with Tigers and Panthers sat immobilized, not due to battle damage, but because their fuel tanks were empty. American armored divisions advanced 130 miles in 7 days during the breakout, but the Tigers could not keep up with this operational tempo, even with full fuel tanks. With their actual combat range of just 30 to 40 miles, Tigers could barely move between defensive positions, let alone carry out mobile operations. During the liberation of France in August and September 1944, Allied reconnaissance units discovered numerous abandoned Tigers and Panthers along German retreat routes. Most of these tanks showed little battle damage, but all had empty fuel tanks. German crews had destroyed what vehicles they could, but often lacked the fuel to carry out proper demolitions. Operational tanks were simply abandoned when their fuel ran out. The December 1944 Ardennes offensive exposed the fuel crisis in a catastrophic way. German forces launched their last Great Western Offensive while dealing with strict fuel rationing. Each panzer division was allotted enough fuel for approximately 150 km of movement, assuming they could capture Allied fuel dumps for resupply. However, this plan failed utterly. American forces held or destroyed these fuel dumps, leaving German armor immobilized across Belgium as fuel supplies ran out. The spearhead of the 6th Panzer Army, Kampfgruppe Peiper, advanced only 60 kilometers before fuel exhaustion halted all movement. The battle group included Tigers from the 1st SS Panzer Division. Reports from Stumann and Lille described Tigers littering the roadsides, immobilized due to empty fuel tanks rather than battle damage. Major Hal D. Macau, an American officer captured by Kampfgruppe Peiper, later testified that German officers discussed their desperate need to capture American fuel dumps. When these dumps were denied, the German offensive collapsed. Macau witnessed Tiger crews frantically siphoning fuel from disabled vehicles, trying to get at least some of the Tigers moving. The fuel crisis was total. German records captured after the war revealed that fuel shortages dominated German operational planning from 1943 onward. Each Tiger consumed approximately 300,000 gallons of fuel over its average service life. That amount of fuel could have powered 7 Panther tanks or 18 Panzer IV tanks. Germany had chosen to prioritize concentrated firepower over logistical considerations, and this decision had a significant strategic cost. In March 1945, the final American assessment concluded that the Tiger, a heavy tank, was an exceptional design for individual combat performance, but a catastrophic failure in terms of logistical sustainability. Its fuel consumption of approximately 1.2 to 2 gallons per mile on roads, rising to 3 to 6 gallons per mile under combat conditions, made it unsustainable in extended campaigns. While German industry could produce the tanks and their crews were skilled, German logistics could not adequately fuel them, especially under constant Allied air attacks on supply lines. After the war, Allied forces interrogated captured German tank designers. Henschel engineers admitted that fuel consumption concerns had been raised during the design phase, but were overruled in favor of military demands for maximum armor protection and firepower. Erwin Aders, a senior engineer at Henschel, testified that engineers had calculated during the design phase that the Tiger's fuel consumption would limit its operational range to about 120 km on roads, and even less under combat conditions. This limitation was reported to procurement officers, who acknowledged it but insisted that the Tiger's combat superiority would make up for its fuel problems. History proved them wrong. Dr. Ferdinand Porsche, whose competing Tiger design was rejected in favor of Henschel's, testified that both designs suffered from excessive fuel consumption. His design used a gasoline-electric drive, which was even less fuel efficient than Henschel's mechanical transmission. Engineers knew that no heavy tank weighing 55 to 60 tons could achieve acceptable fuel economy with the technology available in 1942. However, military leadership demanded the heaviest armor and most powerful guns, regardless of logistical consequences. The result was a tank capable of dominating individual battles, but incapable of sustaining long campaigns. The Tiger's fuel consumption became a key lesson in post-war military education. The U.S. Army Command and General Staff College used it to illustrate a crucial principle. A weapon that cannot be sustained in combat is not an effective weapon, no matter how impressive its tactical performance. Despite its fearsome reputation and genuine superiority in battle, the Tiger ultimately proved that brilliant tactical capability cannot overcome poor logistical sustainability. The Tiger's fuel consumption became a prime example of how superior weaponry could fail strategically when logistical support was inadequate. Tiger 712 remained at Aberdeen Proving Ground as a training exhibit until 1989, serving as a physical reminder of the importance of logistics in armored warfare. The tank that had once terrorized Allied crews in 1943 became a tool for teaching military officers about the critical relationship between tactical capability and strategic sustainability. In 1989, Tiger 712 was loaned to Germany for restoration and display. It eventually returned to the U.S. and is now part of the U.S. Army Armor and Cavalry Collection at Fort Moore, Georgia. Its left side and turret remain cut open for educational purposes, showing internal components to students. The tank stands as both a monument to German engineering excellence and a lesson on the importance of logistical planning in modern warfare. Today, Tiger 712 rests in climate-controlled storage at Fort Moore, Georgia, its 80mm gun silent forever. The Maybach engine, which once consumed fuel at an insatiable rate, will never run again. However, the lessons it imparted continue to echo through every armor school, logistics course, and staff college studying modern mechanized warfare. The principles are timeless and universal. The tank that once terrorized Allied crews in 1943 has become a teacher, shaping modern armored doctrine, not because of its formidable strengths, but because of its greatest weakness. The Tiger could dominate a single battlefield through superior firepower and armor protection, but it couldn't reach distant battlefields, sustain extended operations far from supply bases, or survive the systematic fuel shortages imposed by Allied air power and targeted logistics. A tank that could only travel 120 miles on a full tank of fuel under ideal conditions, reduced to 30 miles under combat conditions, cannot win wars that span entire continents. Germany learned this lesson through thousands of abandoned Tigers, from North Africa to Normandy, the Ardennes and Berlin. America learned it through the systematic testing of Tiger 712, which led to the development of an armored force that prioritized operational sustainability alongside combat capability. In mechanized warfare, the side that can sustain operations over distance and time ultimately wins. The Tiger tank overlooked this fundamental rule, and history never forgave that oversight. The capture and testing of Tiger 712 ensured that Allied forces fully understood that firepower means nothing without fuel to reach the battlefield. Armor protection is useless without mobility to exploit tactical success. The best tank in the world is meaningless without the logistics infrastructure to sustain it across extended campaigns in hostile territory, especially under enemy air attacks. Tiger 712 stands today as both a monument and a teacher. A monument to German engineering ambition that exceeded logistical reality and strategic sustainability, and a teacher of the enduring principle that warfare requires sustainable systems engineering, not just superior weapons. The most powerful weapon becomes an expensive, immobile relic when it cannot move to the next battle. The Tiger tank proved this lesson definitively and repeatedly across European battlefields. The Americans who captured and tested it learned this lesson completely and incorporated it into their doctrine. Modern armored forces continue to remember this lesson. The 60-ton steel beast that once struck fear into battlefields now quietly teaches in a Georgia museum. Its greatest contribution to military history was not the tanks it destroyed in combat, but the understanding it provided about the essential relationship between tactical excellence and strategic sustainability. In that paradox lies the full story of Tiger 712, the most dangerous tank in the world, ultimately defeated not by superior enemy weapons, but by its own insatiable appetite for fuel, which German logistics could never adequately satisfy. Goodbye.